How much does that change the trajectory of where this team goes if he becomes what the underlying stats suggest he should be?
We look like a playoff team if he's replacing. I'm gonna if Nopar comes back and he becomes like an all-star caliber player, maybe a little shade below. I think there's no reason to think we can't make the playoffs because that's a huge difference. Even as a Victor Scott defender, I mean that's enormous.
Welcome to the Viva Albertos podcast. As always, I am your host, Jake Wood, and I am joined this week by fellow writer Gabe Simons, and it's the return of our friend and fellow writer Scott Plaza. Fellas, happy Memorial Day weekend. The Cardinals are still good. They're in second place. How are we feeling so far? Scott, I'll start with you, man.
It's been fun. I mean, it's fun to be frustrated, I guess. As kind of backwards as a thought that is. Like we didn't think we'd be frustrated with this team because they're losing again in games that they had a chance to win. So I guess when we take the zoomed out, whatever 30,000 foot view up the top, being frustrated and thinking that they should win games that they drop the ball in is a good place for this team to be, I guess.
It certainly is a privilege to be enjoying, the games in a sense somewhat to what we have come to expect from this team over the last 30 years where we expect winning. It's kind of a strange place to be in whenever we're expecting that in a season where we were told all off season that, hey, this is a season where we're not probably going to win a whole lot of games, and then they come out of the gate, firing on all cylinders, and it's going to be a hell of a heartbreak whenever in the inevitable other shoe might potentially drop. Who knows? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't, Gabe. Maybe we continue on down this path and we start talking about, trades and shuttling players up and down and trying to win every single game possible and scratching and clawing, to use the Mike Schiltism, and getting ourselves back into the playoffs for the first time since 2022. What are your thoughts so far on the season, Gabe?
Well, I mean, Jordan Walker becoming a borderline MVP candidate has sure boosted the Cardinals' believability in terms of being a winning team, because we all kind of just, not all of us, some of us had written him off, and if he was how he was the last few years, then the early 70s win projection that we were all kind of just expecting made sense, and then all of a sudden he might be like a 5-win player or something. That's going to, I mean, all of a sudden we're like legit like at least 500. I mean, our run differential suggests we're 500 because we're +1 or something like that. But, I mean, even though we kind of underwhelmed this week, we did sweep the Pirates in 4 games last week. So going 4-2 overall, I would have taken that a million times before that 4-game series. It's just the order of how it happened is a little frustrating. And then the Reds, I mean, we were in both. I mean, we killed them in one game, and then the second game we were in it, and it doesn't really feel like quite as bad as like most almost wins sometimes do, because we never really were winning except for 1-0 early in the game, and then the whole time we're playing catch up. Mm-hmm. Those don't feel as bad to me than when you truly blow it. Like, that was the Reds' game to lose. They happened to pull it out. Doesn't really feel like the Cardinals truly like blew the game to me, even though it was within reach, and they could have obviously scored some runs in extra innings and held them, and then the Mason Wins throw was a little off. I know all of that, but at the same time, it's like they blew the game, and we just let them win instead of the Cardinals like screwed up big time. And those games will happen, and we're in it. That's all I care about.
You invoked, Jordan Walker and kind of the surprising start to the season that he's gotten off to. Another player that has surprised us in a pleasant way is Brian Torres, and he made, a spectacular debut to remember. Scott, I think that you might be uniquely able to comment on this, having survived your own bouts, trials and tribulations with the independent league scene. What will you remember most about Saturday, and how many I'll throw it over to both of you for this after you expound upon it, Scott, but how many other waves of roster moves do you think that he might survive when you talk about a return from like a Nathan Church in the near future, maybe a return from Lars Nootbaar in the near future? We're going to get into both of those here in just a little bit, but do you think that Brian Torres is going to be able to carve himself out a role on this team beyond maybe just the initial 10 days that Nathan Church is out?
Sure, I'll touch on the kind of grind first, and then let Gabe get on that, and then kind of follow up on that. The start that I remember, and this is something that me and my wife both talk about. My wife and I, sorry, grammar people, is whenever they cut to the family in the stands, like when they show the first hit and the first home runs. It's like that's the part that's like, oh my gosh, and having that experience luckily that I have had where like I was able to look up and like see my parents in the stands or like see my brothers in the stands. Like that's something that it's something that a lot of the when you think about it where the players come from, a lot of their family hasn't seen them do this, and then to have the family there after the 11 years that we've heard about, thinking about walking away. You hear how bad indie ball is, but the reality is it's gotten so much better. Even just when I was doing it, like you see the stadiums they play in and stuff, but no, it is not the same as the major leagues. And for him to grind through that, play Milwaukee Milkmen to now the St. Louis Cardinals, like that is just an incredible thing. And whether he struck out, went 0 for 4 with 4 Ks, or did what he did, which phenomenal. Like let's get a Bo Hart run going here. I mean, you just gotta just think for a second and just how cool that has to be. And that's what I'll remember is just the fact that he finally got his chance. Unlike Bryson Motts today, who we're going to figure out what his chance is now going to be. But like Torres took it and ran with it, and let's see what Gabe thinks that's going to be for his longer term future here.
Yeah, I've always found it strange when we picked him up. I was like, I don't know why the Brewers got rid of him in 2021 when he was just 23 years old in Double A. Yeah, he wasn't playing well, but I just always found that weird how quickly they gave up on him. Usually, you wait till a guy gets to an 8, like where they did. I don't know. I just found that strange because 23 in Double A is not particularly old, and he had performed up to that point, and he was willing to play any position. And
he's the perfect Brewer.
Yeah,
now he is for sure. Yeah,
he's Caleb Durbin. I know they traded him, but he's like that kind of player. And I just found it strange that they just released him, and then he had to go to the independent leagues. But the difficult thing for him is going to be honestly that he's left-handed. If he was right-handed, I think he'd have no issue staying on the roster. But you got Nootbaar, and you've got Church. And then Jordan Walker's not moving anywhere. I know he's not left-handed, but it's going to be tough for him to carve out a space playing, and especially with Weatherholt stuck at second base, and you want to get Gorman as much time as third base as possible. He's probably not going to be the DH. I just feel like it's tough, especially if Church spends the minimum. I mean, I hope they get him as many starts and stuff as they possibly can squeeze in there until Church comes out. And I'm curious what's going to happen in the 10 days because at the end of the day, it was 10 plate appearances. I don't think that should drastically alter how you planned him before with Torres, even though the game wildly exceeded probably even his family's expectations. The games, plural. But yeah, I think. Luckily, he's the kind of player where he would both be willing to squeeze in wherever he's needed, and he can squeeze in a lot of different spots. He could play everywhere, probably short, and he could even play catcher if you want. Honestly, he used to catch.
Yeah,
he might not be good at it because they moved him off catcher, but I mean, that's not what he'd be on the role for anyway. You wouldn't expect him to play a bunch of games at catcher. He's just there. It could be the Pozo role. I don't know if we want to talk about that, but. He's a similar player to Pozo too, with the just not striking out ever. Very different in terms of the not swinging, whereas Pozo is always swinging. But it's going to be tricky. But luckily, he is the kind of guy where he will literally play anywhere almost, and those guys can find playing time. Somebody has like a little injury or something, and they just need a couple days break, and then you just put Torres in. Maybe he has that role. I don't know.
So that's kind of like in line with what I'm thinking. So like if you go down let's look at the bench, because I think ultimately that's kind of where he settles in at, right? At 28 years old, you're not looking for him to be like a long-term fixture in any starting position, but can he be, a more than serviceable bench bat for this team? I think so. You look at Cesar Prieto, I don't think he's taken advantage of his opportunity, so I think he survives that, clearing that hurdle. You look at Thomas Ajayci, he's not lighting the world on fire in any respects either. either. Would he benefit from going down to AAA and you keeping Torres on the bench for that spot instead? I think you could make a really solid argument as to that Torres's profile makes more sense off the bench than Sajaci's does. Then you get into like Jose Fermin. I think that Fermin's a little more established on the bench, and I think that he would lose in that situation. I think they like Pozo and what he brings to the table, so I don't know that is the case. So I think that he could survive through like the two. So if whenever Nootbaar comes back and Church comes back, I still think there's an opportunity where Torres. If you could look this up for me, Gabe, real quick. In the minor leagues, did Torres have significant splits between lefty righty, or was he more platoon neutral? Because I think that could like add some insight into what the Cardinals might do. Because I think that he outlasts Prieto regardless. I don't really see any role that Prieto has on this roster. If he's able to like capably handle left-handed pitching, then I think that he has more than a necessary case to outlast Sajaci on this roster as well.
I mean, I think certainly with how Sajaci's played, the splits thing is like you send Sajaci down because he's not hitting anybody. It does look like he has a pretty big split, so I will say that. He has not really hit lefties very well.
Okay.
He had a 605 OPS against lefties last year, 972 against righties. This year, he's been better against lefties, but it's still one second. It's still 753 against lefties and 1.038 against righties. So I would not expect him to be a particularly good hitter against lefties, but
serviceable. Like, so if he stood up there to take an at bat and maybe draw a walk, like against a tough lefty, could he do that?
Probably the expectation.
Yeah. So like, do I have that same expectation for Sajaci at this point? No, not with what he's shown. I expect him to chase out of the zone, roll over on a ground out to short or third, and get himself out. And so I just think that Sajaci needs to go down to an environment that is low pressure, and he's able to just get consistent at bats every day to get himself back on track. I don't think that what he's doing right now in the role that he's serving is doing him or the Cardinals any favors. Your thoughts on that, Scott Plaza?
So when I look at the platoon splits, what I actually look at rather than like the OPS, which is obviously important, I look at like the K rates among same-sided pitching, and I feel like that tells us a little bit more than like the average and stuff kind of would, because if the guy's constantly striking out against the same-handed pitching, then that means he's not picking it up. It means he's getting fooled that same way. So that's like you just said, like if Torres can go up there and at least look competent or take a walk against the lefty, I think that's something that Sajaci, like, I mean, he didn't walk ever. He swung as much as possible because, I mean, he had to. That's what his projectable tool was supposed to be, was the hitting. But, and I think one thing we consistently forget about, and I am as guilty as everybody else too, is the Ramon Urias, what's going to happen there.
Good point.
And with Torres being able to play everywhere, I don't think he played much third base this year, but to Gabe saying he's not a prototypical DH, but we've seen now Gorman playing better when he doesn't DH. So then maybe what does it matter who's playing where if Torres can just be a competent bat? We just had Bernie Miklasz on Redbird Rundown that just went on today, and we were just talking about like, man, they have 4.5 or 5 competent hitters, and then it's like 6 through 9. Like, who's it gonna be? If you can just, whether it's Nootbaar moving somebody down, whether it's Torres doing something, just expand that lineup a little bit. I don't care what position they're playing. It does just make the bottom of the lineup a little bit more palatable. I don't think it's going to be Sajaci. I don't think it's going to be Fermin right now. I do think you just give Torres this run and then let's see what Nootbaar does, especially if Victor Scott keeps swinging while Nathan Church is gone and not bunting. He's going to give us some answers, too, that might clarify what the corresponding move is going to be when Newt's healthy.
Scott Plaza, president of the Fan of Bunt Club, is clearly what I got out of that whole spiel.
Hey, bunting has its spot, but not with runners in scoring position.
Firmly agree. So let's get into the Nootbaar conversation just a little bit, because we've talked around that aspect a little bit. Nootbaar is continuing on his rehab assignment, and he has a couple home runs so far, and just a small amount of time back. He's with AAA Memphis right now, and he appears on track for a season debut probably the very first week of June, right around as kind of the reporting that's coming out. Gabe, I'll throw it to you first. What are you hoping to get out of Nootbaar when he returns, and where would you bat him in the lineup upon his return? I think we've kind of had this conversation before, but kind of, getting into what Scott just kind of touched on, where would you put him in the lineup to kind of help lengthen that out, and do you think that he would fit kind of optimally to lengthen the lineup, so to speak?
I'd probably put him where Gorman's at right now, and then I would put Win 6, and then Gorman's 7th probably. And then what I would hope or expect from Nootbaar, at first anyway, would just be figure out a way to get on base, solid defense. I wouldn't expect anything extraordinary yet, even though, he's had a couple homers in the minor leagues, which I wasn't really expecting to have power for a while. Just it's the nature of how people come back from injury sometimes, is power is the last to arrive. But I simply, if he could just, walk 10 to 12% of the time, make solid contact when he does, at 250 or something, 340 OBP. I would have him replace Gorman just because Gorman's a little bit unreliable as far as you don't really trust him as a hitter, number one, and then number two, just his contact ability with the 4 guys ahead of him. You'd rather somebody make better contact or at least get on base more, so that you can drive in some runs, create more opportunities for runs and all that. I'm hopeful though. This rehab process has resulted in better stats than I expected, or better results. I actually wasn't even expecting Nootbaar to be playing rehab this early, because with the Tommy Edman experience last year, I thought there was more reason to be super cynical about Nootbaar's return, because he had a surgery that I've never heard of, that nobody's ever heard of, that we have no examples of, or maybe one example or something, but very few precedents. And that typically seems to lead to longer than normal recovery time. Whereas the Edman thing, I was like, this seems straightforward, and then he just didn't come back. So, I don't know what was up with that. Apparently Edman is now injury prone, which I guess we got rid of him at the right time. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm hopeful Nootbaar just provides a nice, steady bat, a 110 weighted runs created plus, 120, somewhere in that range. Hey, and if the surgery was holding him back this whole time, and he wants to just go off and be what we maybe thought he was going to be when he first had that 2 months where he broke out.
How much does that change the trajectory of where this team goes if he becomes what the underlying stats suggest he should be?
We look like a playoff team if he's replacing. I'm gonna defend Victor Scott.
Clip
tomorrow.
that.
I'm gonna defend Victor Scott tomorrow. But if Nootbaar comes back and he becomes an all-star caliber player, maybe a little shade below, I think there's no reason to think we can't make the playoffs, because that's a huge difference. Even as a Victor Scott defender, I mean that's enormous.
I see what you did there. Shaved that off. He shaved his heels. I caught on to what you were trying to do there, Gabe. Whether it was intentional or not, that was well played. So Scott, your impressions for Nootbaar, right? Do you agree with Gabe? Should he be in that 5 spot? Do you think that? So some of the comments that have come from Nootbaar so far have been short of best shape of his life kind of thing, but he said he's feeling better now than he has in a long time, and perhaps like Gabe had made reference to a little bit, maybe that was something that was really holding him back from being who we thought he could be. Obviously it is a major if in terms of question mark, but we had a lot of major ifs in terms of question marks coming into this season, and a lot of the things that we were hesitant or held back on are trending in a positive direction, speaking on Jordan Walker specifically, and we'll get into him just in a little bit, but what does that do genuinely for the Cardinals in terms of their legitimacy to be to sustain and continue on if he is who we think he can be in that 5 spot in the order?
So I'm glad Gabe put a number between 110 and 120 WRC plus, because I was going to say if he could be a 115, so I'll split you right there. But then as I was thinking about how I was going to say that, he's also going to be the victim in both a positive and negative way of the small sample size, the triple S that we hear, because we haven't seen him in a while. He's doing well in the rehab stuff, but then when he comes up, if we're expecting him to be this, the guy that we have expected for the past couple of years, and he is awesome, then let's go. We got to trade everybody and keep Lars Nootbaar, or do we trade him right away because now his value is so high, or he's so bad, then why are we even giving him run? And then that's when it's, let's bring back Nelson Velasquez or whoever else in that situation, because that's kind of how that small sample size works. And remember, Nelson Velasquez was supposed to be the left fielder of the future, and then I don't think he's hit anything really ever before or after.
I think this is I think this is the part where I'm supposed to remind you that spring training stats don't matter.
Right. So again, that's the small sample size that we are going to see with Newt. And again, this season where the Cardinals were not supposed to win, well, now, like you'll see with Bernie, we've said our expectations change. If Newt comes back at 115, is he no longer a trade candidate? He is a let's have him play out, and let's go ahead and squeak into the playoffs and see what happens. As to where he fits, we know Marmol likes to go right, left, right, left, right, left, so that kind of limits to where he's going to be. I think because of his plate discipline, it doesn't matter the side of the handedness of the pitcher. So if he's in that 6th spot, I think that's a phenomenal spot for him to get back. It's who's going to be in that 5 spot, because it's not going to be Mason Wynn. I'm starting to have more concern with his offense than I really want to as a 23, 24-year-old, who I think is going to be a top 10 shortstop. The 5-6 spot might not be where he should be right now. So if Newt can fit into that 5-6 and be that 115, if we're going to put a number on it for however many at-bats that's going to be, go ahead and say this is a playoff team, I guess.
Clip that too. Okay, I'm going to put a montage together.
Pitching.
Viva Alberto's believes that this Cardinals team is a playoff team. All right.
Pending Nootbaar's results. Continue.
No, despite Nootbaar's results.
Pending.
I was looking at it today, and Fangraphs still has the Cardinals at a 30% playoff chance. And they're still 4th in the division in that aspect as well. So, only the Reds have a worse chance at making the playoffs according to Fangraphs right now, despite where the Cardinals stand in the being a third of the way roughly through the season now. Let's move on to another guy in the minor leagues. We talked about Brian Torres coming up to make his debut. Bryson Motts was supposed to make his MLB debut today, but unfortunately the game was rained out, and he will have to wait for another day to get his first taste of the show. This also seems to have thrown a wrench in the Cardinals' reported plans of how to maneuver this little mini stretch they're going through. What do you think the Cardinals are planning to do before the start of the Milwaukee series? Gabe, I know you had some interesting thoughts on this.
Well, I was kind of wondering if they were just going to hold on to Motts to possibly pitch in the Liberatore game. The Brewers have a lot of lefties in their lineup. I don't know if people know how many lefties they have, but I know Andrew Vaughn can pinch hit or something if he's not on the starting lineup, which he will be for Liberatore at least. And I'm kind of wondering if they see all the lefties and they're like, we got this kid's hopes up. We got to still pitch him on some level because, we don't got to pitch him but we got to at least have the opportunity for him to pitch. And if we need some innings tomorrow because things don't go well, or maybe they go really well because we start blowing out their starter for some reason, then let's get Motts some innings. I'm very curious with Motts how much the AAA, because all the AAA starters have really high walk rates, and I'm not entirely sure if that's specific to AAA or if I know it has something to do with a different ball, but we might be able to figure out a little bit how good his control is if we see him in person, because he does have a relatively high walk rate, but he misses a decent amount of bats. I'm just curious how that would go, and he'd get to face a lot of lefties most likely because they do have a lot of lefties in their lineup. They really do. And I want to see him pitch. And I think most people want to see him. Sure. Yeah. He's on the 40-man. You could have him, and worst case scenario for him is that you never need him tomorrow, and then you probably send him down the next day or something, or the day after the game, and you bring Ryan Fernandez up, who has looked really well. Or maybe even just have him for the entire Brewers series because they have so many lefties. Who knows?
Well, I think that you have a good point. They have a lot of lefties. I also think that Pat Murphy could structure it in a way that kind of puts those like Ivan Herrera type landmines in the middle in the lineup to where they left, right, and it's kind of hard to find that lane for Motts. I think that I don't know his splits this year against right-handed batters, but Andrew Vaughn I know is really good against left-handed pitching. Jackson Chorio is good against left-handed pitching. I'd imagine that William Contreras is really good against left-handed pitching, and so that's three guys right there that you could set at 2, 4, and 6, and it makes it harder to maneuver. Again, I don't know if Montz just purely dominates lefties or if because he's a starter, he could reliably get all of those out. But obviously, those are major league hitters, and that's a different animal. Scott, what are your thoughts on kind of what the Cardinals could do tomorrow? Do you think that Montz remains on the roster, or do you think that it was just kind of like, hey, bud, crap timing, sorry it happened that way, we're gonna send you down and bring Fernandez back up to start the series?
So if Ali Marmol listens to this, number one, what's up, Ali? But number two, he's probably laughing so hard because like there's probably like a super simple answer that we are just like, well, this could possibly happen, but this
analyzing to death, yes.
Yeah, and it's like, no, dude, like it was very clear, like it was just going to be a spot start, like so. But let's go ahead and play into it, Ali. So go ahead, you got me. The only thing is because it's Motts. Motts is what gives me the question because they did have to actually call him up and start that service time or add him to the 26-man roster. He wasn't the 27th man like Fernandez was. So therefore they have used one of his potential option years, assuming again he's going to go down. So the question is, do they keep the starting rotation further off schedule and just let Mott start tomorrow? Since he's already going to be using that option, and then you send him down for Fernandez because he did pitch 2 innings. Go ahead and give him one more day. Memphis is off. Again, minor leagues are off on Mondays, so keep him around as well. Let Motts give us whatever you got. Keep him in that starting rotation just so that he is on a normal regimen and regime and routine that a starting pitcher would be for his major league debut. Then go ahead and say, Scram, see ya, thanks for your innings, and then go with the normal rotation starting again on Tuesday with Liberatore. I'd be surprised if they went that way. I think it's just actually like looking back at it, it's like, yeah, you were with us. You don't have anywhere to be Monday. Just stick around with us, and we'll just ship you out officially tomorrow.
I have
Yep.
I have some stats to share if you want to. His splits
Sure.
in the minor leagues. I'll start with Springfield because it's a bigger sample. He had 51 Ks to 6 walks in 38 innings against lefties. 83 Ks to 27 walks in 75 innings, and it's even a little bit more pronounced this year. He has 18 Ks to 6 walks in 14 innings against lefties, and 25 Ks to 18 walks in 25 innings against right-handed batters. So he's had a lot of trouble not walking guys against right-handed batters. That's not great for starting, but I guess we'll see if he can avoid the walk. If we see him tomorrow, at least. I don't know. I'm hopeful, just out of curiosity, to see what he looks like. Because I wish I could watch more Memphis games, but I don't really have the time. So to see him in the main action would be awesome.
I think that, like, the presence, like, to what you had talked about, Scott, the presence of the off day on Thursday kind of throws a wrench in allowing Motts to make that spot start anyway. I think that would put guys on, like, you would start to get into that debate of rest versus rust kind of thing. You're taking guys out of their normal routine. And so I think the Cardinals would err on the side of caution against that. My personal thoughts is, like, hey, sorry, Motts. Bad timing. We'll get you back up here, late June, and when we have another stretch of tough, like, what is it, like July? He could even start against the Brewers, in that 5-game series in July, whenever they have that makeup doubleheader. So, like, there are opportunities in the relatively near future where you can get him back in. I just think that where the Cardinals roster is right now, it might just not be the right time, and just unfortunate that the Cardinals managed to get rained out twice in Cincinnati. That was really tough. Ryan Fernandez has looked fantastic in his few appearances this year. looking like the 2024 version. I just wanted to throw that out there, that like for those who are still a little bit hesitant on Fernandez potentially, just because you have maybe some 2025 Ryan Fernandez PTSD. I think this year is different. He's talked about kind of a mindset shift and being able to not give the opposition so much credit that he was beforehand, and recognizing that his stuff is good and it can play in the zone too. This game is a reminder that this game is just as much mental as it is physical, and so just that being out there, I think that maybe Fernandez has recaptured a little bit of what made him really good in the first half of 2024. I want to finish it off tonight. Kind of the theme of the show was, kind of what are your impressions of the first 1/3 of the season? And it's pretty hard to talk about this 1/3 of the season without talking about Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker's second in home runs in the National League at 15. If you recall, a couple months ago, a lot of the talk around Walker, kind of like you referenced in the beginning, Gabe, was that, he might have to start the season or at least a lot of people were advocating that he might have to start the season in AAA, not that the Cardinals were realistically considering that. And now he looks like a potential MVP candidate. He is a first-year salary arbitration eligible player this offseason. I know, Gabe, specifically where you stand on J.J. Weatherholt and that extension conversation. Are we at a point right now where we start at least having the conversation, what does a Jordan Walker extension look like? Scott, I'll throw it over to you first for your thoughts.
The Jordan Walker extension, I just am so hesitant for myself to truly make myself believe. Mostly because I also traded him this offseason in my Dynasty Baseball league.
Big mistake.
Why
Worst
wouldn't
GM
ever. But I am buying in because the strikeouts look so much better. We're seeing that trim strikeout rate again. Like when you look at the Baseball Savant page, it's still in blue, but when you look at the year to year, you're like, that is so less blue than it was previously. So I'll start buying in. I actually start spending money and buying in as far as the extension goes. I'm prioritizing probably Weatherholt and Herrera still. Maybe Herrera and Walker maybe about even, but I'll start with Weatherholt before I start diving into the Walker waters.
I think you gotta wait for the year to be up just to see how the whole year goes. He did have a bat yesterday. I forgot who the pitcher was, where he went down 0-2. And then he worked his way to 3-2, and the 2-2 pitch specifically was a very tough slider that was just a little bit below the zone, and he did not swing. The next pitch was a home run. I'm like, all right,
it was all Petty. It was off of Chase Petty. Yeah,
Chase Petty. Thank you. I'm like, I'm all in. All right.
I was sitting there going like, was it Santion? Was it Ashcraft? Was it against? No, that was against Petty. He was still in the game. That's right.
Yeah, and the whole day he was taking long plate appearances and not striking out, and getting he got a homer in the first game. He got a double, and I was just like, okay, you got me. That convinced me. That back
and kind of for me where I'm at, like we're seeing him able to go through little dips and stretches where it doesn't look as good as it had, like the peaks of the season. It looks good, and then he goes through these little lulls, and then boom, he's right back to getting back to that MVP level and going on these tear stretches. And what he's doing is the thing that we hoped that Gorman would be able to do eventually, was minimize those valleys, right? And so I think the fact that not only is he 23 years old, you could buy out his arbitration and still buy out the first 3 to 4 seasons of his youthful prime up to age 30, 31 years old. You incentivize the player to stay by giving him a healthy contract, and at 30, 31, the player is incentivized that he could still go out and get another major contract. Finishing this one, it just kind of marries them together for a little bit longer. I think there would be a case for having, for making some sort of extension offer. If you're somebody out there who would be hesitant to it just because the last 2 years are what the last 2 years are, and you want more time to see how that plays out, totally fair, totally understandable. I think for me personally, I would be comfortable with them at least exploring what that looks like. I don't know how they feel about that. Obviously, we could ask Chaim Bloom directly on Saturday, but I don't know that he'll give us some sort of straight answer. Which I said the last question was my last question, but this is actually my last question. You know, we have the privilege of being able to sit down with Chaim Bloom this Saturday. Is there anything standing out about the state of the franchise you're hoping to get an answer on? Not necessarily give away your question of what you're kind of hoping to ask Bloom, but like what is an area of the franchise you're kind of hoping he gives like a thoughtful response on? Scott, I'll throw it over to you because Gabe looks like, oh crap, I'm not prepared.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Bloom is just such a good speaker that whatever you're going to ask, like, he's going to give you a good answer, even if it's a stupid question. So, like, that's why I'm like, oh, let's just see what kind of happens and what the vibe is of the space. I don't want to get into the buy or sell because he's going to tell us, just like Mo did last year, like, we're going to get there. We'll tell you when we get there. We'll have more clarity. And I think his answer is going to be the same. Like, we're going to build for the future. So I guess that he won't tell us either, because why would you, is at what point is prospect depth, like, when do you feel comfortable trading from that? Like, at what point, whether it's at what point at the major league team and how they're performing, or at what comfort level in a position are you where you can start dealing from the prospect depth to plug those other holes? I think that'd be a fun question.
Is that a catcher question, basically?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's like when you look at the first base is kind of where I'm like, oh, well, there's Burleson, and then what else? So is there even a pitcher that you might say, hey, can we deal from the minor league ranks to get another minor league first baseman? That could be a potential answer for the future. That's more of what I'm meaning. The catcher situation, it's going to play out how it's going to play out, is what they're telling us as well. So I guess you could read it as that way, and I guess I didn't mean it that way, but good I'm reading between the accidental lines there.
Well, for me, I'll be curious to know, is there any, like, he's kind of somewhat addressed this in the past, but I'd also be curious to know, is there another organization or another franchise that they're kind of modeling this strategy off of? Like, are they not necessarily trying to be the Milwaukee Brewers, but is there, like, an element to what they are doing on the margins? Like, is that something where you find is like the next wave or the next trendy thing, like that's the next thing to do? You know what I'm saying? Like that's what all the best teams are doing. Is it Seattle, where you're trying to build up your pipeline to the point where you can supplement your roster with your seventh best prospect and get an all-star in Brendan Donovan? That kind of thing. Like, are you looking at the Rays and just, obviously not that are you interested in perpetual churn in your roster and, ultimate flexibility always going forward with your payroll, but staying ahead of that aging curve in essence? Like, what elements are driving like the direction that the franchise is, like, as for you as the figurehead, wanting to go? Like, I'd be super curious to know what elements around the league that he's kind of looking at that is saying, we want to either catch up to that or we want to get ahead of that very thing. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Let's do this real quick to finish up. Scott, what are you looking forward to most over this next week, aside from getting to sit down with Chaim Bloom?
Gosh, I won't say looking forward to. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about this week because the Cubs have been so bad that they're just gonna
factor.
It's just gonna happen. So I'm nervous. I'm excited. This will be my second blogger day. I'm super excited to do this. My wife is gonna get to have the opportunity to see us all nerd out together. So she'll get some level of understanding at who I have to deal with on a daily basis. But I'm excited to play the division. But I'm nervous at the timing that we are getting everyone in the division.
What about you, Gabe?
I would have. I kind of appreciate, because I went 2 years ago, and I appreciate the fact that I barely paid attention to the game. So I think that was a nice thing. And now I feel like, I got to really pay attention to the game. So it's a little bit of a different situation for me this time. I don't know. I think it's just going to be a good time, and I'm still not going to stress about the results too much, because we're still not even through May, and I mean, they've beat every sort of hurdle that we've thought they would stumble upon so far, and maybe this is the hurdle that they stumble a little bit. Not a big deal. The division in general has been great for some odd reason, with the exception of. I mean, even the Reds have been kind of good, although their run differential is just.
They've been bad this month. They were good in April.
Yeah, but their run differential is just like horrendous in a way that makes it hard for me to believe in them. I know run differential isn't everything, but when you get outscored by like 24 runs or whatever they've been, you kind of put a side eye to how good they could be. But yeah, no, I'm just excited to, just to be there and get the food and drinks and all that. And
Absolutely. Free stuff is always the best.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Final question for you guys. How many innings / how many beers is it going to take before you go jump into the tarps off section in right field?
Okay, let me get into this first. So,
Hold on.
I will say that I have been trying to take better care of myself, and I had 2 beers 2 weekends ago, and I woke up with a hangover. So,
Welcome to getting old, buddy.
If I'm gonna do the tarps off session, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. I did support the SFA boys and buy a shirt. I don't really want one, but I mean it's something cool. That I'm glad to do it. I just hope with the Cubs being in town. I wrote about it, about like how it's a cool thing, but when there's 20,000 people in the stands and you see that rowdy section, it's kind of like, that's kind of cringy. So I hope it'll be like 40,000 people with the tarps off section. I'll go ahead and blend in then.
I am not moving from the suite with the free alcohol.
Good man.
Not saying, maybe we do tarps off for bloggers. Who knows? But there's
Love to get Choctaw involved in that. I mean, you won't have to convince Kyle Reese of getting shirtless, but good luck with a few of the other guys. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying we're from pitch 1, baby. We're going tarps off the whole way. Let's do it. I'm here to be a man of the people. Anyway, for Gabe Simons, for Scott Plaza, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Don't forget to rate and review and hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every Monday morning when a new episode is released. We will talk to you all next week when we bring you the audio from Blogger Day and our thoughts and takeaways from that experience. Have a great week and go Cards!